My name's Elaine Friend. I'm an international consultant on high sensitivity, and I like to put YouTube videos up and make videos to help highly sensitive people, and especially parents raising sensitive children and sensitive youth. So there's a great question in the Elaine Aaron Facebook group recently, and I wanted to address it. The question brought up a few different issues. One is there any research about highly sensitive children being easily manipulated precisely because they're more sensitive to the suffering of others and might be shunned by more assertive, less shy children? Are there is there any information on over manipulation or over empathy? So thank you so much for this question about highly sensitive children being manipulated or having trouble with their too much empathy. So it's true, those of you who know, but if you don't, I'll tell you the characteristics of a sensitive person, a highly sensitive person, especially a child, since we're talking about children. And I'm going to include teenagers in this discussion because it can be a big issue. So these are young people who process things more deeply. So they think a lot more about what's going on in their world and about people. So it's true that the suffering of others might, really engage them because of all their deep processing. Also, they have stronger emotional reactions and stronger empathy than children without this trait or youth without this trait. And so if you take all that thinking with all that empathy, then you can get a young person who might be more easily manipulated or less likely to take power in the world in certain ways. And I want to break that down a little bit. These are youth who can also become very easily overstimulated or overwhelmed by all this information or by the world, by their environment, that kind of thing. And they notice subtleties. So, one thing I want to just start off with the noticing of subtle things, that a sensitive youth might very likely notice the slightest change in facial expression in someone, and it could hurt their feelings or cause them to have a strong emotional reaction. And if this person's facial expression change, say a teacher or a peer, impacts them, it might be something that the person wasn't even aware that they did. Maybe they became thoughtful for a minute. For example, my face, when I'm really thoughtful and listening, it might look disapproving, right? And so if you are highly sensitive, you might, and you're a child, you might think in some way that I'm disapproving, when in fact I'm just being so thoughtful. But when we are noticing so much, it can be really challenging. I raised a sensitive young man, and I often worried about him being highly sensitive and being manipulated or being a follower. This is something I hear from a lot of parents too, that they're worried that their sensitive youth is too much of a follower. Well, I think one of the things that makes them seem like more of a follower is that deep processing. They're observing their environment and what's going on with people in their environment before they're engaging. So it might take them longer to become engaged in a situation. It might look like they're following their friends. I have faith in the sensitive children that when they have processed enough and figured out what they think and feel about an environment, that they will stick up for themselves and take care of themselves. Sometimes it's a little quieter. Have you ever had the experience, speaking to adults and teens here, have you ever had the experience where you had an interaction with someone and then you walked away and, I don't know, half an hour later, even a day later, you think, I really wish I would have said this. This is what I think about that. Well, when you have the time to do the processing, then it comes up. So in the moment, yes, I believe that the sensitive youth or child might be more might have the risk of being more taken advantage of. So here's one thing that we can teach them. It's really important that we teach all sensitive people, but especially children and youth, that it's okay to say, I'd like to think about that before they give an answer. To really take up the space in the world, the time and the space that they need to come up with what their truth is. Another great thing that we can teach them is to prepare for interactions with that child or that friend or that even that teacher who might come on a little too strong and make it harder for the sensitive child or youth to assert themselves and stick up for themselves. So maybe we practice those conversations with them. So here's a story about a 10-year-old highly sensitive boy who could use some more help and a little more time in math class. He is gifted at math, really gifted. But because he's processing so deeply and he can become distracted by all the things he's thinking, he might miss actually hearing what the assignment is, or he might miss the instructions for how to do that one little thing. And so he needs to assert himself and ask the teacher for help. So putting together some talking points for your children and your youth, helping them process it, role play it with them. How do they talk to this person, this child, this teacher, and have them practice it with you? Now, parents, it's a really good, and teachers, it's a really great idea to talk to that person with your youth, to model it for them. Not to always, depending on the age of the youth, not to always do it for them, but to bring them along. So I often say to sensitive tweens and teens in my practice, especially, that if there's something they'd like their parents to know, I won't tell their parents for them, but I'll tell their parents with them. So I can help guide them and protect the time and space that they need to process to put that message out. This is another great technique to both practice ahead of time and then to have a conversation with them that will help them. Prepare those talking points so they know what it is they need to say. So will your sensitive child or youth be more easily manipulated by more assertive or less sensitive children, or even the highly sensitive ones in their lives? It's a possibility. Yes, it's really important that we start to build their confidence and their practice in sticking up for themselves and to knowing what their standards are. My last point will be that I think it's really important that we teach them about their temperament and about how their brain and their personality is different than other people's. It's not better or worse, it's different. So there are lots of different parts of our temperament. Sensitivity to our environment is only one part of it. So teaching your child about who they are and that diversity is good. It's not just about eye color or height or skin color or culture or language or abilities or intelligences, another way that we're very, very different. It's also about our temperament and how our brains work. So remember to, in this question, they were talking about less shy people, less shy children might manipulate the more shy children. Shyness is not related to sensitivity in any way statistically. Shyness is something that is learned. Now, 70% of sensitive children are introverts and 30% are extroverts. So sometimes an introvert may seem to be more manipulated or less strong because they may be less likely to put themselves out there. However, it is not true. Don't be fooled for a moment. So your sensitive child does not need to be shy. That's something that we can learn or unlearn, but they might need more time to process or more time alone. And that is a strength because they're thinking through the solutions to the world. They're great problem solvers. I hope this is helpful, and I hope that you will train the children in your life, teach them maybe, and train them how to speak to adults and to other children in a way that they take care of themselves and stick up for themselves. This is Elaine Friend with Are You Highly Sensitive Live. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to hearing more questions, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you get alerted when I make new videos.